every other daily spherical soft contact lens that you have in your practice. And so you all know how to do that. So from a fitting and patient management standpoint, it is exactly the same as any other soft spherical lens that you would put in, with the exception of this follow-up check at the 6-month mark to determine efficacy and just reinforce good habits with young children. So that's the easy part. What makes it easy is the work that sits in the lens and the work that CooperVision did. It's important to know that this lens is not a progressive lens or a lens that was designed for presbyopia that's been repurposed for myopia management. The optical design is intentional, and that 2 diopters of myopic defocus is created in such a way that you get the efficacy that we see. And it's not the same kind of defocus that you would see in a repurposed multifocal. So design matters. And the FDA approval is significant because the FDA approval for this lens has a specific code that specifically says this lens slows the progression of myopia.
Hello and welcome to this Wolfe podcast on iCurve Media. Today, I wanted to highlight a panel discussion that I was involved in that I helped moderate a few weeks back, and we discussed myopia mainly. And the participants in this conversation, you'll hear Dr. Chandler Mann, Dr. Jordan Dow, and Dr. Michelle Andrews, and their opinions related to how to incorporate myopia management into a practice. I think it was a really helpful discussion for me to kind of wrap my mind around what really successful myopia managers are doing in their practice to simplify the process for their patients. So please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. Young and emerging presbyopes can be tricky. These patients want and need additional help at near, but they can be resistant to solutions that create even mild distance blur. The MyDay multifocal lens has been great for our presbyopic patients. It allows those patients to transition into a multifocal more easily. We've had this lens now for long enough that we've been able to see how simple transitions can be from an adaptation standpoint from lower ad designs to higher ad designs. The MyDay multifocal material is CooperVision's softest one-day hydrogel lens and features aquaform technology combining the unique balance of high oxygen permeability with natural wettability in one material. The result is a highly breathable lens that keeps our patients' eyes looking clear, white, and healthy. So if you haven't started utilizing MyDay multifocal in your practice, I'd encourage you to reach out to your CooperVision representative to get started. I want to discuss the MyDay toric contact lens for a minute. When I'm reaching for a daily lens for my patients, I need to know that it will be available in parameters that I want, and it needs to work. This improves my chair time and my patient satisfaction. The MyDay toric features the same optical lens design features as the most prescribed monthly replacement toric lens on the market. MyDay toric now completely mirrors the Biofinity toric's parameter range. To be clear, if you find the parameter in a Biofinity toric, you can find it in a MyDay toric. This toric lens design is multifaceted to ensure optimal visual acuity, lens stability, fit, and comfort. Its uniform horizontal ISO thickness and wide ballast band quickly orient the lens for better performance and simplified fitting. The MyDay material is CooperVision's softest one-day silicone hydrogel lens and features aquaform technology combining a unique balance of high oxygen permeability and natural wettability. The result is a highly breathable lens that keeps our patients' eyes looking clear, white, and healthy. So if you haven't started utilizing MyDay toric in your practice, I'd encourage you to reach out to your CooperVision representative to get started.
But thanks for joining us today. I'm Chris Wolfe. I practice in Omaha, Nebraska, and we're going to talk about myopia. And we're trying to make myopia management simpler for your practices so that your patients can have access to the care that they need and the care that you want to provide for them. And so that's really the whole goal of our conversation today. I had the pleasure of getting to sit back just like you all and learn from these guys, which are the experts. I want to provide some introductions. I'll let you kind of tell us a little bit about your practice, tell us a little bit about yourselves, why you like myopia management, why you feel like it's been a benefit to your practice and to your patients, primarily starting with your patients. Now, you've probably all met Dr. Michelle Andrews. So Dr. Michelle Andrews is stepping in for Justin Kwan. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background as well. Is Justin and I had a conversation on the podcast this last week. It released on Monday. Like and subscribe, share it with your friends. And it was really about the kind of underlying why behind myopia management. So I think it was a great prelude to this conversation. And Dr. Andrews is going to be stepping in and kind of giving us when I say global, kind of a U.S. Overarching understanding of what CooperVision gets to see in the marketplace related to myopia management and MySight specifically. And then we have Dr. Jordan Dow, who is from Nebraska. Jordan, tell us a little bit about your practice. Well, he's from Nebraska, but he practices here.
Yes, I'm in Florida. My wife refused to learn how to drive in the snow. So, that's how I find myself in Jacksonville, Florida. And I opened up a Cold Star practice 7 years ago. And really, it was drinking from the fire hose. I tried doing everything all at once and, kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. And myopia management is really one thing that really took off in our area. And it's something where myself, I'm a high myope, and being able to, take care of the kids, the families that are coming in, we really hit some good beginnings with it, and it really changed the way that we did our practice. It opened up a lot of other doors and opportunities as well.
Great. I'm excited to learn from you.
Yeah.
Dr. Chandler Mann, so tell us a little bit about your practice, where you're at, kind of how myopia has impacted your patients, and then also managing that has impacted your practice.
Yeah, so I'm in San Antonio, Texas, Stone Oak Vision Source. We opened Cold Start as well about 15 months ago. Kind of like Jordan, trying to do everything. We started pretty quick, pretty rapid. I started out, before we even opened, I went to a bunch of schools, and I have a big focus in myopia management. Obviously, I love to do this, and I was at a big ophthalmology group before, and big reason I left is because I wasn't able to practice myopia management, wasn't in the practice style. Found out actually that Jordan sent me a couple patients last summer, all the way from Florida to San Antonio. So we just found that out about 10 minutes ago. But once we got in, we're kind of in suburban San Antonio, a lot of families, a lot of kids. So demographically, it's awesome for that. And, I love to do it. And I think it's the best thing we can do for healthy kids otherwise.
I think what's really cool is both of these guys, and what you'll find out is they're in the trenches, seeing patients day to day. They get the grind of what it's like to get pushback from parents or questions from parents that might make us uncomfortable. So we're going to be offering like an opportunity for you all to ask questions during this. So each kind of session, we've kind of broken down our ideas into different sort of topics. And so please ask questions about, hey, this scenario comes up and it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't think I'm doing a good job communicating to patients, or whatever. Or if you don't say it, I'll say it, because I feel those same kind of pulls in my own practice. But what I think is really cool about both of these guys is that they have figured out ways to remove themselves as a barrier to patient care, so that the patient gets what they need and they are not the barrier to that care. And a lot of it comes down to cost understanding and conversations, or how do we present this in a way that is more palatable to the patient. So before we get to that, I want to start with Dr. Andrews. Dr. Andrews is going to kind of give us an overview of kind of the simple truths that we get to see within myopia. Sort of what does CooperVision, what do you see when you look at the market space, and what we should be considering in our practices?
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Jordan and Chandler, for being with us. And thank you all for being here. I think we maxed out the room. So obviously, a really important topic, and it's important for us to make sure that you understand that this can be easy. So start writing down your questions, because they're going to help. When we think about the size of the market, just to give you a benchmark of perhaps where you are or where you could aspire to. If we look at all of the children in the U.S. marketplace that are would be considered of pediatric age, and then we add up all the practitioners, optometrists and ophthalmologists, and say, all right, if all 70,000 of these licensed optometrists and ophthalmologists all were going to take care of every single one of those kids, each eye care practitioner would have 278 active myopia management patients in their practice. So quick math would say that that's 25 a month if every single person did it, which we know is not the case. And so as we think about where you are and what you can aspire to, that's the size of the market that we're talking about. And it really is a wonderful opportunity to get in and get in at the beginning, because those patients and their parents, as I'm sure we'll hear, refer more patients to you because there aren't enough people actively engaged in myopia management. So a couple things about some simple truths, and I think we have a few slides here just to kind of bring things home. You know, when I learned about glaucoma, there was a target pressure. Now, I graduated a few years ago, so the target pressure there's new thinking about that. But the point was that we kind of had an end goal in mind, right? What does good look like, and how will I know if I've gotten there? And so what you can see from the slide that we have on the screen is you might be able to think about myopia management in a very similar way. When we're looking to slow the progression of myopia in children, what we're trying to do is put them in a lower risk factor for things that cause irreversible vision loss. And we typically think about retinal detachment, glaucoma, cataracts, and macular myopathy. And so what you can see from this chart is that as the myopia increases, which is reflected along the x-axis there, at a certain point, the risk of these vision-threatening diseases increases, and it increases exponentially. And you'll see that happens at about -3. So if you like to have a vision of what your goal is, this is a great place to say, boy, if kids' vision could stabilize at less than -3, then we've done a really good job of reducing their risk factor for things that could impact their vision for the long term. So I think that's a good anchoring point.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Justin and I had this conversation, and I think his thing that I think helps me clarify is you want kids to graduate less than a -3, right? So get to beyond high school, less than a -3, puts them in a high likelihood that, you know, the rest of their life, they're not going to have that exponential rise in additional retinal diseases.
Yeah, and just from a lifestyle perspective, you know, walking through life as an uncorrected 3-diopter myope is very different than being a 6-diopter or an 8-diopter myope. So there's lots of reasons why that -3 makes good sense.
Yeah, great. So as far as like, you know, from a standpoint of standards of care, right? So tell me a little bit about, now standard of care, I think a lot of cases has like these legal ramifications, potentially. But talk about the standard of care a bit and how you all see it and sort of other definitions related to it.
Sure. So at CooperVision, we look at it from the perspective of if the evidence is there that we have the capability to identify a potential disease state early and do things to prevent a person from falling into that risk structure, then that becomes a standard of care. And once we had the opportunity to have an FDA-approved product, that really solidifies it. The science is there that if a child progresses, that's potentially damaging, and we have something that we can do about it. So it was really the World Council of Optometry in 2001 that took the first boldest step to say that letting a child progress in their myopia through traditional contact lenses or glasses is no longer acceptable. And what they said back in 2021 was myopia management, this effort of managing the myopia. So if they're young and they haven't started progressing yet and we can get time outside, that's myopia management. There's evidence that says time outside is protective and preventive. If they do progress into myopia, then it is our obligation as a profession to put them into a treatment program that corrects their vision but also slows the progression. And the way the WCO talks about is they talk about it as manage, mitigate, and measure. So it wasn't about how you do that, but rather that you should be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I don't know, what do you guys think about a standard of care? Like, how do you get beyond the barrier, or have you just accepted in your practice that it's like, look, I have to do something, or I have to at least have the conversation?
Yeah, I think that as you know, you start seeing more patients and you start seeing how much of an impact it's actually making. You know, you're seeing kids now for several years that have progressed minimally compared to what they would normally expect. It changes how you feel about it. It becomes just a part of what you should do. You know, it's going back when you first graduated school or were in the middle of school going through clinicals, and you're talking about getting progressive lens for patients then when you don't need a progressive lens. And it's something that you had to learn how to do it. You got more comfortable with doing it, talking about something that you're maybe not experiencing yourself, and then all of a sudden it just becomes part of what you do. And that every time you bring in a new technology, any sort of glaucoma testing and things like that, it just becomes part of your practice. And it's just the expectation for us now.
Do you put, do you put something in your chart, like in your chart notes when a patient says, I'm not going to do this, or they decide they're not going to proceed with myopia management yet? Do you put something in your chart that you've discussed it? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I document refraction, document axial length, document that there's a thorough discussion with the parent, giving them the options for myopia management. Our conversion rate with myopia management is extremely high. It's been a couple rare cases where parents have not wanted to proceed at that time. Whenever that happens, though, I do bring the child back. I emphasize to the parent just kind of how important it is to me. I bring them back for a no-charge follow-up at 6 months just to monitor them. And I think that what that does is it kind of puts emphasis on that I think it's important. I'm not doing this for financial gain. I'm doing it because I actually care about the kid. And
you're an optometrist.
Yeah.
You're an optometrist.
I know. Yeah.
You're killing me.
Yeah, that's right. I know. But I know. It's quick, though. When I bring it back,
it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
These are all your friends.
Yeah.
And your colleagues.
What I will tell you, and my team will tell you this too, is the 3 kids that we've done that with, it's only been 3, and we have over 100 kids, and it's only been 3 that have said no at first. Every single one of those came back, they progressed, they started treatment that day. So it does provide conversion as well, but it emphasizes to the parent that, this is extremely important. We need to act quickly. Damage done, we can't prevent, but, further damage we can actually prevent. And I give them information. I give them access to the CooperVision website, give them access to different studies online that show how important it actually is and how effective it is. So.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about, again, because I think there's good ideas and there's not just my ideas about what should be successful. I think there's lots of great success in terms of different practices.
Yeah.
And so the way I want to do it doesn't necessarily translate in the way it's going to work in your practice or Jordan's practice or any of the number of practices here. So I want to dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
First, I want to talk a little bit about a couple more things in terms of background. Tell us, Dr. Andrews, why MySight is different and how it can be more simple than maybe we've thought it could be.
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first.
All right.
It's a daily soft contact lens.
Yeah.
And it fits like every other daily spherical soft contact lens that you have in your practice. And so you all know how to do that. So from a fitting and patient management standpoint, it is exactly the same as any other soft spherical lens that you would put in, with the exception of this follow-up check at the 6-month mark to determine efficacy and just reinforce good habits with young children. So that's the easy part. What makes it easy is the work that sits in the lens and the work that CooperVision did. It's important to know that this lens is not a progressive lens or a lens that was designed for presbyopia that's been repurposed for myopia management. The optical design is intentional, and that 2 diopters of myopic to focus is created in such a way that you get the efficacy that we see. And it's not the same kind of defocus that you would see in a repurposed multifocal. So design matters. And the FDA approval is significant because the FDA approval for this lens has a specific code that specifically says this lens slows the progression of myopia. Now, every contact lens in the marketplace is FDA approved, but the FDA lists their approval for very specific indications for use. And so a single vision soft lens is for the correction of myopia and hyperopia. MySight does both. It corrects the myopia and slows progression, and so it has a unique code. And so why is that important? Well, it's the only device on the market that has that code. It's the only device approved specifically for slowing myopia progression. And now that we have 7 years worth of data, not only does the FDA validate the safety and efficacy, but we now know that there is no rebound as well. So what's exciting about the field of myopia management is there's so much coming. There's so much science, and it's hard to keep track of. So I wanted to just make sure that everyone knew that when you're looking for what is this product and what does it do, you absolutely want to look at the evidence, but all FDA approvals are not the same, and make sure that that approval is for slowing progression of myopia. It may not matter as much to you in the room because you can prescribe everything based on your clinical judgment, and you'll need every tool in your toolbox. Parents really appreciate this, especially if you are getting younger children into the product. Mm-hmm. That confidence for parents goes a long, long way.
When we did the myopia protocol for Vision Source a few years back, there was this unknown. So off-label, one of the things that a lot of people will do is they'll use atropine. They'll use different dosing schedules of atropine. And the question that we get, and we've now used it long enough to see patients in our practice where we've taken them off of atropine. They've graduated out of it. We're trying to test the system. Well, a lot of those studies within atropine show a lot of, rebound after you stop it. So there's kind of this unknown, like, well, when I stop it, do we taper? Do we do X, Y, and Z? And I want to highlight a point you made, which I didn't know right now, is we have enough data to show that within a certain period of time, we're not going to get rebound with MySight, which I think is pretty compelling because it answers the unknowns for us, right? It answers the questions that we have in our mind is like, well, am I going to have you like alternate this for a while where you're using maybe a single vision ProClear one day versus the MySight, and then you kind of go back and forth on the way out? The answer is no.
Well, and I think it helps all of you in the room because we know that once that eye progresses, you can't put it back, right? You can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. So you've asked these parents and kids to come in twice a year, which is one more visit, but they've invested a lot. They've invested in learning how to put the lenses in. They've invested in changing their lifestyle. I'm sure parents have invested in some tough conversations in the morning or at night about taking care of contact lenses properly. The last thing you want is this child to go through all of that thinking they've done everything that they can do and the parent feeling really, really good about themselves, and then it rebounds back. And so because we know that we can't go backwards, the confidence play is to put them in a lens that has the proper certifications to give them the best chance of that not happening. Yeah. And that's an on-label device.
Yeah, great. So I want to have kind of conversations about, really when I think about this in different ways to kind of filter this into my practice and understand a little bit better about who I'm going to sort of discuss, how I'm going to start to pick the right patients. And Jordan, Chandler, any ideas about when you get started, like how do you decide who you're going to treat? Do you wait for progression? I've sort of shifted really recently about the idea here, but I want to give you the understanding. I'll kind of throw in Dr. Kwan's kind of articulation to me recently about this because it was kind of mind-breaking for me. But talk about, like, when are you starting to say, look, we really need to do something?
Yeah, so when I see a patient, if they have any myopia at all, I'm talking about it. Yeah. If they're, I don't care if it's, minimal, if they, technically don't even have any complaints or anything like that. I'm even starting to talk to patients when, hey, your kid's in, he's a plus 0.5, he's 6 years old. Right now he's great, right now he doesn't need anything, but you know what? In a year, don't be surprised if his eyes are starting to change. And so I'm starting to even plant that seed earlier. I'm not waiting for them to even get to be myopic because any myopia is still myopia. And for us, even at the low myopes, we basically are trying to paint a picture for the parent of what that child's life is going to be like. Well, we can wait until they turn into a -1, a -2, and they start needing glasses. But at that point, they already need glasses now for the rest of their life. They're going to need it to drive. They're going to need it to do everything. But if we're catching your kid when they are a -0.25, a 0.5, and we're saying, let's go ahead and start talking about this now, let's start taking these preventative measures right now, then they may not be dependent on glasses at all for the rest of their lives.
So let me dig into that just a bit before I get to you, and I'll probably ask you the same question, Chandler, is, Jordan, I'm the patient, I'm the parent, okay? Pretend I know nothing about myopia. And I bring you, I'm trying to think of who's 6 in my family. So we'll say it's 7. So I'll bring you Benny. So Benny's my 7-year-old. Benton is my 7-year-old. And let's say he's plus a quarter, right? And let's say that I have 5 diopters of myopia. My wife had LASIK. She was 6 diopters myope. That's not true, but let's just assume it was. You know that information. I'm sitting in the chair. What does the conversation sound like with Benny and you?
Yeah, well, I always welcome the parents to do research. I always welcome them to go out there and look at this. You can go on to, multiple different myopia calculators.
No, that's not what I'm asking. Pause.
Oh, boy.
You are talking to me.
Yes.
Talk to me. I'm the parent.
All right.
I think this is helpful because this is what we go through. We always want to say, this is what I do. No, do that thing. I want to hear it. Be the doctor. I want to be the patient.
Right now, Benny does not need any glasses. His eyes are perfect. Would love for him to stay at this prescription forever, but he is going to get taller. As he grows taller, his eyes are going to grow longer. As his eyes grow longer, his vision is going to worsen. The eye is going to weaken, and there is going to be a potential for worse things happening, but he's also going to become dependent on glasses. And so if we can take some preventative measures right now, we can actually reduce the chances of him ever having to deal with that kind of problem. And it may change his whole life and how dependent he may become on glasses in the future. You know what it's like to have a prescription. You know what it's like to have your eyes get worse every single year. So let's go ahead and start doing some things right now, and at the very least watch extremely carefully so that the second he starts getting into that point where he is now myopic, we've already been doing things to slow down the process.
Great. Okay, so any critiques? Woo! Woo! All right, so we're going to move to Texas, and next year Benny's 8. And now he's
And Jordan sent him to me just he's done before.
That's right. And so Jordan sends him to Chandler. Now Chandler, Benny's now 8 years old. He's now a quarter diopter myope. Is that enough change for you to do something? And if it's the case, tell me the doctor. You're the doctor. I'm this parent.
Yeah.
What does it sound like?
So I got all our wonderful chart notes from Dr. Dow. I'm sorry you had to leave him, but welcome to San Antonio. As Dr. Dow informed you last year, or 2 years ago, Benny will progress in his myopia. And I know Dr. Dow's probably giving you information to read about it, but as you know, there's things we can do now to actually prevent myopia from progressing. Preventative medicine is the best medicine, in my opinion. What we can do is not just slow his prescription down, but we can actually prevent very bad things from happening to him in the future. These kids in this generation are much more progressive than we've seen before. As their prescription increases in a linear fashion, we actually know that the disease state, and I give them a handout with diseases, the disease state actually increases in an exponential and parabolic fashion. To prevent that, we have a multitude of treatment options. We have an FDA-approved treatment option called MySight Soft Contact Lens. It's just like a soft contact lens you or I would wear. It has special designs in there. Is that me that's doing that? Sorry.
You good?
It has special designs in there that, that actually prevent and slow myopia from progressing and stop that eye from elongating. And typically what I'll do is I'll have an axial length measurement and discuss that. I'm sure Jordan would have had that as well and sent that over to me and talked about the elongation of the eye as well. So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I focus more on also not just the prescription, because I always tell them, I say parents and children, love the prescription to stay stable, but me as a practitioner, I focus more on the disease state and preventing future disease. And that kind of hits home with parents a lot too, is when you really emphasize on that. And if they can help their kid prevent something like that that's actually vision impairing in the future, it's a big deal to them.
Yeah. So you left me with that.
Yeah.
What's the action item for me? So are you then saying, I want to fit Benny in this contact lens today? Are you saying, here's some information, we're going to schedule a follow-up for you in a week? Are you going to wait for that 6 months? What are you typically doing?
Me personally, I have fantastic staff, and they're the best contact lens INR teachers in the world, in my opinion, but I fit them that day. So even if we do that and the parent is still kind of unsure if we want to go forward with that, or we want to have another consultation. A lot of times with parents, and you guys will all know this, there's one parent in the room, right? Typically it's the mom, decision maker, but there's going to be another parent that wants to be involved, okay? Or if there's split parents too, I have consultations with those parents as well, but I'll send them out with Bailey and just have them put the contact lenses on. One, that shows the parent that the child can do it properly, do it easily, and two, the child gets excited because they can see pretty well. Then when that happens, if the parent does want to come back for a consultation, if they want to sign up that day, I sign them up that day. And I'll still bring them back for a 1 week follow-up, make sure the child's adapting well. But two, if they don't, I will always make sure to schedule a consultation, something on my schedule with both parents. I give them my cell phone, and we have a discussion about that in future. Yeah.
I think it's key to have some point of, if they do nothing,
right,
we're going to see you back.
Absolutely.
Right? I think that's really, do you do anything differently, Jordan?
I think, for us, whenever the conversation's truly becoming, let's do something about this, we do send them information. We send them an email. We have them come back for a consultation. We do a free consultation when mom and dad can come in, and we sit down and we go over everything with them.
Yeah.
I know for my office, our staff is fantastic as well, because at the end of the day, there may be an option that I think is best for that patient. I want to make that recommendation, but to let them know what is out there, and so they feel comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, it's a lifestyle change that we're making to make things better for them, but they all have to be on board for the process to work.
Yeah.
So I want to do a couple things here. I think there's a couple pressing topics that I want to get to that I think will help people understand this. But then we got great questions right now. I know you can't see them, but they're great questions, and I want to get to those too. So let's talk about dollars. Okay, so I think there's a generalized discomfort about how do I set my fees? How do I approach this from a financial standpoint? Who's going to talk about it with them? Now, of course, nobody's recommending obviously what you should charge or how much you should charge, but there is a mechanism in place where you can say, look, this is how I approach this, and I'm willing to give away a service in lieu of something else. So let's say you see Benny, and you fit him in the contact lenses. Am I getting a contact lens evaluation on that day? Am I going to pay out of pocket for some sort of contact lens evaluation on that day?
Are you signing up for MySight?
You put him in a lens, right?
I put him in a lens, yes, sir.
So you're going to put him in a lens before I decide that we're going to do that?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, explain that. You've done the work already.
Yeah. So I've done the work, yeah. So I've done the work. Typically, when I do that, the discussion with the parent is, they're wanting to do something, right? And so I've made it imperative that we need to do something. The parents on board, they want to do something. I put them in that lens, right? There's a multitude of treatment options, right? They're going to go, if they're a good candidate for MySight, they're typically going to go MySight because, one, it's FDA-approved. Two, it's, soft contact lens. Parents love soft contact lenses. That's what they wear, right? So when I do that, my pricing has already been, while they're doing the fitting, I discuss my pricing with the parents.
You discuss it?
I discuss it, yeah.
Do you discuss your pricing with the parents, or do your staff do that?
I tell them, we'll talk about schedule, we'll talk about pricing. We treat it as a program, not a product.
Okay.
And so when they come in and we get to the last slide and they've already, more or less decided what they want to do based on everything, that's when the dollars and cents come out.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is and I think this is a great approach, so I'll kind of put aside maybe a few approaches that I've seen done. What I'm hearing from both of you, and these guys are successful, so I would probably think about their approach, is one, they've sort of created a program. And while they both like to give away that 6-month follow-up, I suspect that 6-month follow-up giveaway is actually built into the cost of the program. So it's not really that they've given that service away. They've just accounted for it in some sort of program fee at the beginning of the year, by which they're going to take care of adjustments and changes. And that's actually quite an easy thing to do. You could actually just calculate, and we've got calculators on MySight that we built with the myopia protocol, and you could actually say, look, if I'm going to spend 15 minutes at the 6-month follow-up or 30 minutes at the 6-month follow-up, my cost on that is X. That's going to have to be built into this whole entire program. That's kind of what you've done.
Right.
Yeah. So for us, what that last slide looks like, it is a very upfront breakdown to why the pricing is the way it is. And so we actually have it split up into fitting, materials, and visits. And so we charge your contact lens fitting, whatever your multifocal or soft contact lens fitting, however you want to treat the MySight, that's right there, because an INR is an INR. And then we have the materials, the cost of the contacts or the cost of the contacts. And then we have the visits, and this is where we've already discussed the schedule. We're going to see you several times through the year. We're going to be watching very carefully. We're going to make changes throughout the year if there is any sort of progression, and that's all built into that. And we let them know if you guys want to come in more often, that's fine. We're not going to charge extra. We're not going to charge per visit, but at the end of the day, this is the program cost. This is the cost for me to take care of you for the entire year.
I want to discuss the MyDay toric contact lens for a minute. When I'm reaching for a daily lens for my patients, I need to know that it will be available in the parameters I want, and it also needs to work. This improves my chair time and my patient satisfaction. The MyDay toric lens features the same optical lens design features as the most prescribed monthly replacement toric lens on the market, the Biofinity toric. MyDay toric now completely mirrors Biofinity toric's parameter range, and to be clear, this means that if you can find a parameter in the Biofinity toric, you can find it in the MyDay toric. This toric lens design is multifaceted to ensure optimal visual acuity, lens stability, fit, and comfort. Its uniform horizontal ISO thickness and wide ballast band quickly orient the lens for better performance and simplified fitting processes. When prescribing MyDay contact lenses, you can feel confident about your environmental impact because for every MyDay contact lens sold in the United States, CooperVision's partner, Plastic Bank, collects and converts an equal amount of ocean-bound plastic through their global network. The MyDay multifocal and MyDay toric contact lenses will provide your patients with great vision quality and comfortable lens experience, all while making a difference in our environment. So if you haven't started utilizing MyDay multifocal in your practice, I'd encourage you to reach out to your CooperVision representative to get started. I want to discuss the MyDay toric contact lens for a minute. When I'm reaching for a daily lens for my patients, I need to know that it will be available in the parameters I want, and it also needs to work. This improves my chair time and my patient satisfaction. The MyDay toric lens features the same optical lens design features as the most prescribed monthly replacement toric lens on the market, the Biofinity toric. MyDay toric now completely mirrors Biofinity toric's parameter range, and to be clear, this means that if you can find a parameter in the Biofinity toric, you can find it in the MyDay toric. This toric lens design is multifaceted to ensure optimal visual acuity, lens stability, fit, and comfort. Its uniform horizontal ISO thickness and wide ballast band quickly orient the lens for better performance and simplified fitting processes. When prescribing MyDay contact lenses, you can feel confident about your environmental impact because for every MyDay contact lens sold in the United States, CooperVision's partner, Plastic Bank, collects and converts an equal amount of ocean-bound plastic through their global network. The MyDay multifocal and MyDay toric contact lenses will provide your patients with great vision quality and comfortable lens experience, all while making a difference in our environment. So if you haven't started utilizing MyDay multifocal in your practice, I'd encourage you to reach out to your CooperVision representative to get started.
Yeah, great. And I'll contrast that with another mode, right? So that's a very common modality. The upside is that you're sort of covering all those costs for the patient. You once the patient accepts to doing it, then they're kind of locked in for the year, and they have all access to those sort of follow-up visits. The downside is, potentially, for many of us, we would think, boy, that's a big fee up front. Now, I got to collect that all up front, and so is that a barrier? And if it is, well, there's other routes, right? Like Jordan actually broke it down. He said, look, we have a contact lens fit fee. You could charge a contact lens fit fee, let the patient pay that. We could sell the contact lens, the MySight. We do that every day in our practice. That's another way to do it. And so they pay the fit fee, then they buy the contact lens. And then at the 6-month follow-up, maybe it's not included, but it's like, look, you're going to have an evaluation in 6 months, and who's going to pay for that, we can decide. But the reality is that you could break it out for that patient. So maybe that for your practice might work better for your practice. I'm not advocating one or the other. I'm just saying you got to make it fit within what is going to work in your practice. Michelle, any thoughts about that?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because there is no one right way. What I would encourage you to do is think about what you currently do in your practice and you do well, and just make this match that. Because you're already taught, like, new is hard, right? New always takes longer. New is always hard. This lens is super simple to fit, but some of the things around it make it harder than you want it to be. And so anytime you can take a currently existing process and just tweak one thing or two things, you have a much greater chance of being successful. If you do everything with fitting fee and product and annual supply, and you're really good at that, and now you make MySight the exception to that, too hard. You know, if you're already doing other things where that makes sense to you and it's working for you, then do that. But just give some thought to how you want to do it, because they all work. It's just really what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing when I look at practices across the country that are successful in doing this, or anything within their practice that is different, is they find something they do well and they make this look almost exactly like that thing with one slight change. I think that's kind of the point I would leave everybody with this. Now, I want to get into some of your questions, because actually I think we've got 10 minutes of questions, and I think it's important. So first question is the top ranked, and you'll see everybody can, if you're on your phones on Slido, you can actually decide which questions I'm going to ask next by giving a thumbs up. And honestly, I'm going to ask any one of these, whichever one's at the top of my list. So the first one that's at the top of my list: what age do you stop myopia management? What do you guys think?
So for our practice, I always tell parents it's case by case. 15 to 16, 17, is usually around the time that we're doing it. But I tell them that I want to see 2 years with zero progression before we even start it. The discussion of discontinuing. And I tell the parents, how aggressive do we want to be about this? If 15 and he just hit a growth spurt, you know what? We want to make sure that Benny's going to be covered just in case, right? Some parents really want to be very proactive, and some parents are wanting to get out of it as soon as possible. But what I do is when we are exiting them from the program, when we're saying, all right, 16 years old, you haven't changed in 2 years, you really are excited to get out of this program, well, okay, let's go ahead and put you into regular contact lenses. Let's still watch you for a year. And now, if we see you change, now we know we exited too early. We need to jump right back in. And so we do 1 extra year of the same amount of monitoring that we did otherwise during the exit year, just to make sure that, again, they know that we're invested in this.
Great. What's funny is him and I have never talked about this before, but I haven't been doing this as long as Jordan has. But I have parents ask me all the time, when do we do this until, how long are we going to do this? And I say the exact same thing. I say I want 2 years of stability. We'll bring them out of the contacts. We'll put them in a soft spherical contact at that time. And I'm still going to bring them back on that period that I'm watching them and make sure that there's, no progression. If there is progression, we'll put them right back in and stop it again.
Okay,
so
great.
Yeah.
Let me ask the next question. So what, let's try to, we got a lot of great questions. we're going to focus on like 30-second responses. Okay? Because I want to get to these questions. All right, what do you do with your patients that have astigmatism that cannot be corrected with MySight? First, I'm going to modify that. What's the amount of astigmatism where you're like, this is not going to work?
So really, it's about, it actually changes by the age, right? If it's a younger kid and they really want to be in the soft lenses and, they're maybe don't have as high of visual demands as, a 14-year-old, I may be okay with, masking a little bit more of the astigmatism, letting it be there. But if it gets to the point where it's about a -1 or above, that's where I'm really saying, hey, your kid's not going to see as clearly with these lenses at the end of the day. In some situations, it's let's go ahead and get you some glasses to wear on top of the contacts during school and those kinds of situations to fix the astigmatism. I have some families that have chosen that. And sometimes it's let's just try a totally different option. The other, again, off-label options, the orthokeratology, the, atropine drops, sometimes those are better options for them as well. And they can still even wear soft contact lenses with that fix the astigmatism and still be able to do like the atropine drops, for example.
Yeah, great. Dr. Mann?
Same. What I'll do with the astigmatism depends on the axis too, but I'll typically always try MySight on them if they're less than a diopter of astigmatism and just see how they see. If they're not seeing well or don't see as well as I think they should and they're not happy with it, then I'll go with one of those routes as well. Talk about how they're off-label, but orthokeratology, biofinity, multifocal, toric, center distance, something along that line.
Great.
Yep.
Dr. Andrews, do you want to provide insight on the FDA number? How much SIL? I can't remember off the top of my head. Is it 75?
Yeah, the clinical study was based on 75 or less.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Okay, next question. We've got this is for you again, Dr. Andrews, or I see Dr. Kwan in the back. You could chime in. Welcome, Dr. Kwan. So will parameters be extended past a -7 soon?
Not as soon as you want. Not as soon as we want, but we've heard you. We've heard you on parameter availability. We've heard you on the toric, and so we'll go as fast as we can.
Now, I think also this kind of bridges into one other point, and you could hit this as well, and I think a common source of confusion. If I have a patient that is at the higher end of the FDA approval, and I start them at age 11, I'm still covered by that FDA approval. Is that correct?
Yeah, great distinction, Chris. So the FDA approval is very specific to the children in the study. And so they were all between the ages of 8 and 12 when they started, but they were driving and going to college when they finished, right? They were 18, 19 years old at the end of a 7-year study. And so the technical on-label definition is that they started between the ages of 8 and 12, and they had less than 4 diopters of myopia and 75 or less SIL. That's the on-label. But if that child starts at 12 years of age, and they were -3, and they're still in the lens at 17, they're still on label because
Even if
they
they've
started.
progressed beyond the -4. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Even if they've progressed beyond the -4 at 17.
As long as they
still
started
on
in that
label.
window, they would still be considered on label.
Great. Okay, next question, 30 seconds. how do you transition someone out of atropine into MySight? Or do you ever use both if the patient's still progressing off-label? So first question, part of that question, Dr. Mann, how do you transition someone out of atropine and into MySight?
I will typically leave them on the atropine with the MySight. I'll lower the dose of the atropine. Typically, I'll be doing a 0.05. I'll drop that down to a 0.025 and then a 0.01. I'll do that over like a 6-month period and then stop that as they've been on the MySight for 6 months. I've done that twice, and so far I've seen no rebound effect when I've done that, and actually stable progressions.
I think it's wise to taper.
Yeah.
Dr. Dow.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about the atropine drops, everyone's excited to get out of those as soon as possible. There's a reason why they want to go into the soft contact lenses. So we try doing a pretty quick one. I usually, when we get them the contacts, I keep them on the drops for a week. Follow up and see how they're doing, then start tapering off of it. A pretty quick one. They want to get out of those drops. They want to get on the contacts. And there are some times where when I see progression, even with the MySight lenses, we'll add drops partway through just for kind of an extra little bump to something there. And then it's the same thing. We'll try to taper them off. We only do that for a few months at a time during a growth spurt usually.
Great. Okay. Next question. Somebody bumped this up. Okay. What tips do you have for having the conversation with parents who have sticker shock for treatment plans? How can you put them at ease? Start with you, Dr. Mann, or Dr. Dow.
All right.
I looked at Dr.
George,
Dow.
yeah, you looked at Dr. Dow. Said my name. Jordan, go ahead.
Jordan, go ahead.
How we handle sticker shock?
Yep.
We tell them there's options. Because of the way that we do our pricing, some options are more, cheaper than other options. But then also we emphasize that we were going to watch you. All right, let's come back in 6 months. Let's go ahead and see how it looks. You can kind of start planning a little better. But we also offer in-office financing, not in-office, third-party financing through, Sunbit, Care Credit, those kinds of things. That's what those options are for. And so we tell patients, hey, you can split this up over 3 months, 6 months, a year even if you wanted to through these financing options. At the end of the day, we want to start this as soon as possible so that we can make sure that we're preventing anything from happening. But if we need more time to think about it, let's come back in 6 months and we'll have that discussion. We have many that have come back after 6 months or a year and all of a sudden last year wasn't good, but this year it is.
Great. Jalen?
We'll do in-office payment plans as well. We'll do third-party financing. I let them know we can kind of, do our in-office payment plans on a 3-month period. Typically, if we're doing a year's worth of treatment at least, we'll take half up front. And once we get that down payment, we let them know that we are flexible. The most important thing to us is that the kids are getting treatment, that they're getting in the treatment. As we're seeing them, if we're doing MySight, we stock MySight. So if we have a year of it, we'll give them the 6 months that they pay for. At that 6-month follow-up, they're ready to pay for it again and give that next 6 months. But as long as you're flexible with the parent, you show that they care, and they understand that you're willing to work with them, they typically don't mind the sticker shock, and they think it's extremely important. So,
awesome. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to make an executive decision. We'll have one more question. I don't think it's the one that you all have rated as top, but I think it's probably the most interesting one that people are going to want to talk about, at least to plant a seed. Do you ever file the contact lens fit to insurance?
Yes. We do. We split it up so we have the contact lens fitting, we have the contacts, and then we have the visits. And we tell them, no insurance is going to cover, the visits. That's just the program. But we have the fit, we have the contacts, we have an itemized invoice that has them. And so we're going to go ahead and submit that to the insurance, just like we would any other contact lens.
Dr. Mann.
We did it first, and then as a new practice, got my first IMED audit, freaked me out. And the 4 things that they audited were all MySight contacts.
Did you fail?
No, I passed. So we're going to have a discussion with that on Monday and talk about going back to that, because I've actually talked to a few people here. So,
do you guys disagree about anything?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Sports teams probably.
Yeah, sports teams probably. Can I add one tidbit real quick?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so this is something that I think is extremely important. It's kind of built our office, and Jordan talked about chair time earlier and how it's a really long chair time with parents when you're in that room, so you want to bring them back for a discussion. One thing that's really advanced our office in cutting down on that chair time is we've shut down for a day and fully trained every single person on our team. And it's a lot harder with bigger offices, but I still really encourage you guys to do that. Emphasize the importance of doing that. Build morale in the team. Everyone gets excited about what they're doing, helping the children. When you educate the front desk, educate your entire team. When parents are calling about exams, our front desk will always ask, is it for a myopia management exam? if the parent typically will always ask what that is, and then they're amazing. They talk to them, they give them information on it over the phone. The parent's very interested. After they get off the phone, they will still send them information on it. When that child comes in, 80% of the time, that parent, even if the kid's not a myope, is like excited and wants to go into a myopia control program. So that's one thing that I would emphasize to all of you guys. If y'all haven't done that yet, take the time, educate your team, have them talk to the parents on the phone beforehand, send them information beforehand. They come prepared, and they're extremely excited to get going. So it cuts down your discussion time, cuts down your chair time, and it allows for same-day conversions if you want to go that route.
So both of these guys are super accessible. You can bombard them on the way out in the back, ask them for all the handouts that Chandler gives. Dr. Andrews, you summarize conversations better than anybody. Can you summarize this conversation?
30 seconds or less?
30 seconds.
Pressure. You know, we started the conversation around a standard of care and what is standard of care. And so the challenge I'll leave to the group is this. Everyone in this room took an oath when we became an optometrist. And there's 3 parts of that oath that just fit with myopia management so well. The first is that we will look after the health and well-being of our patients. And that is just what we do. That is foundational to who we are. In fact, it's the number 1 statement in the oath. And when you see charts like that children are at risk for retinal detachments and myopic maculopathy, and you can do something about it, we can check that box. Another part of the oath is that I will operate within the capacity of my scope of practice. Well, there is nothing that you heard today from these doctors that is outside your scope of practice. Soft contact lenses is right within our wheelhouse as a profession, and there's no reason that we can't make that happen in our practice. The third piece I'll call out is education. We have a responsibility to educate our patients about what's available to them and the things that they have to choose. If they say, I want to think about it, that's great. Write a prescription for glasses or contacts, see them in 6 months, and go back to number 1 and number 2, which is we have a responsibility. And so if you're not yet convinced that this is standard of care, you were convinced and you are living with the oath that you took. And at least those 3 statements fit so elegantly into doing the right thing for children with myopia. So thank you for coming, and thank you for all the great questions, because that tells me you are like on it and ready to go. Really appreciate all of that. Enjoy the rest of
Thanks,
exchange.
everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dr. Andrews. Thanks, Dr. Dow. Thanks, Dr. Mound. Appreciate it.